Okay, so we're going to do a more complicated example with arrays now. So let's actually, we'll get rid of this script. We'll make a form. Name will be F1. And then in there, we're going to allow people to enter some data. We're going to do some mathematical operations on their data for them. So we'll say enter your data, comma separated. And we'll have input, type equals text, name equals data. And the idea is that the user just pastes in some comma separated values and we're going to analyze it for them. So we'll put an input type equals button, value equals analyze. And then let's put in a paragraph tag called results, which is where we'll display the results. Okay, we'll add a header section and a script tag in there. And in that script tag, we'll have a function that will do the analysis. So when the person clicks the button, we'll say onClick equals analyze. And we're going to define that function, analyze, up here. All right, let's start by just doing alert document.f1.data.value. And we'll see how that works. So there's our code. Here we have it open in our browser, and we'll paste some test data in there. All right, so here's some data that I'm working with right now. So let's copy this, and we'll come back here, paste it in, and say analyze, and you can see here we've got this alert with all of our numbers. Great. Okay, so now we want to take those numbers, and instead of just showing them, we're going to put them in an array and then do some analysis. So we'll do the average, the mean, the median, something like that. Okay, so we need to actually get this, so that's fine, what we have there. And let's store that in a variable called data. And now what I need to do is turn that data into an array, because right now it's just a string with some commas. To do that, we'll make a variable values. That's going to be our array, and we're going to set that equal to data.split. Now this is a new command, and it means we're going to split up our data into pieces, and we're going to split it anytime we see a comma. So basically this says create an array and chop up that string anytime you see a comma. All right, when we do that, let's do alert values just to see that there's something there. So we've got a big string, and let's see if we have some. So let's do values of 0, which would just give us one number, and we get the first number. If we do alert values of 4, we get a different number. So that's great. Now we know we have all of our data stored, each number in this array values. And I just want to add here, this process I'm going through where I write like one line of code and then test it in the browser and come back, that's actually how I write code, and it's a good way to do it. It really lets you catch errors one at a time so you don't write a big chunk of code and then have to go back and figure out where something's wrong. So now that we have our array of values here, we can write a loop that's going to go through them. So let's say for our variable I, which I like to use as an index, even though we haven't been doing that too much so far, we'll set I starts at 0, and we're going to go while I is less than values.length. Remember, that gets the number of elements in the array. And every time through the loop, we'll increment it. And now let's just write out these values on separate lines. We're going to put them into this paragraph here, results. So we'll do document.get element by ID results. .inner HTML equals whatever is there now, I'm going to put this on separate lines, with values of I concatenated onto it with a line break. Now the reason that I need this on the right side of the equal sign is that if I just set the inner HTML equal to values of I plus a line break, I'd set it over and over and over again. It would keep changing. So instead, I have the whole text there and I'm concatenating onto the end the new value each time. Okay, let's see if that works. And it does. We click Analyze, and now on each line we get all the different values that I pasted in. Great. Now we can actually start doing some math with it. So instead of just printing it, let's comment this out. Let's compute the average of these values. So what's the average? Well, it's the total of all the values divided by how many there are. We know how many there are because we have the length. So what we need to do is just keep a running total. So we're going to start off before the loop and say our variable total will start off at 0. And then each time through the loop, we're going to set total equal to whatever it was before plus values of I. So total starts at 0, and when it goes through the first time, total will be set equal to, and we ignore what's on the left side, its current value, 0, plus whatever's in the first element, which I think is around 52. So let's say total is then 52. We go back up through the loop again. Let's say the second value is 1. Total gets set equal to its current value, 52, plus 1 is 53, and then that gets set equal. And so we're going to go through over and over and keep this running total. When we get to the end, we're going to compute the average. All right, how do we do the average? We'll say variable average is the total divided by values.length, which is how many things there are. And we'll do this line, the inner HTML, equals average colon, and then actually the average. All right, let's refresh that. Click Analyze. All right, so now I get this NaN. That's not a number, so that means somewhere there's a mistake. My guess is that there's probably a non-number in here somewhere. So let's uncomment this and just take a closer look at it. Let me comment this line out. Okay, so we're going to scroll through here. And here you can see I've got the word bad as one of the values. All right, so that's the only thing, but we don't want to have to change our code for that and, like specifically handle that one case. Instead, we know that this screws up if we have a non-number that's pasted in. But we know how to check for numbers, right? So we don't need to do this printing anymore. So we comment those lines out. But we only want to add values of I to our total if values of I is a number. So we're going to put a conditional statement here. If is not a number of values of I, that means values of I would not be a number and we wouldn't want to add it. So we're going to say that's not true. So this will check if it's not a number. That'll be true if it's not a number. So by putting the negation, it will be true if it is a number. Then we're going to add to our total. Let's see if that fixes our problem. All right, so now I'm getting nothing, which again means there's probably a bug, so we just need to sort out what that is. So first, let's go back and check the code. So we want to make sure this is right. So what I often do when this happens is actually add in some debugging statements. So let's do exactly what we were doing before. We'll move this line down. but then we'll also add in is NaN for values of I to actually see what the result is. All right, so I have a big long line here, but basically I'm just adding in that print statement. Keep these commented out. All right, so let's analyze again. We're still getting an error, so that makes me think I have a problem with my code here. So let's comment that out and see what happens. All right, so all of these numbers are coming up false for is NaN, which is good because they are numbers, and it's coming up fine for true. So all of our values are coming good. The next thing we want to do is check if this is working the way I want it to. So we're going to replace this, and I'll put this all in parentheses, so we're not is NaN. Try that. And that's not working. So there's some problem with this structure that I have here. Let's check it one more time to make sure it works without that. Okay. So it was working, and it doesn't work once I have it like this. That looks correct. And so that works. So let's go back up and look at my statement again. All right, so here's the problem, which is actually a pretty simple one. So I have an open parentheses for the if, I have an open parentheses around before is NaN, and then I have an open parentheses for the value. So that's 3. I have one here that matches the function call. I have one here that matches the group, but I don't have one to close the if. That's the problem. That's something that we probably would have caught also if we had looked at the error console, but it's worthwhile going through the issue like that. Okay, so this hopefully will now work with the total, and it's going to eliminate the issues that we were having with that one non-number value. Let's try it again. Okay, still not working. So let's take a look at the web console here. Go to JavaScript, reload, analyze. All right, and we're not getting any, oh, here we go. We're not getting any JavaScript errors. This is just the encoding of the HTML. So that means there's not a syntax error, but we're going to keep checking our errors like we were before. So I'm going to uncomment that line that prints everything out. That seems to be working okay. Now I'm going to try copying this whole thing again and putting it in here to see what we're getting. All right, so everything's coming up true. And notice our bad value isn't here anymore, so that's good. That all looks like it's supposed to. Let's augment this. So we're going to have document.getElementById of results is equal to itself, and then we'll just add on new total, and then whatever the current total is, and a BR. So we're just going to see the total going up as we go through things. Okay. All right, and here we can see what the problem is. That I'm trying to add numbers together, and instead they're being treated like strings and they're being concatenated. And so when we get down to the end, we have a non-number at the end. So what we need to do is make sure that the JavaScript knows when we're doing the addition here that these should all be treated as numbers. One way that we can do this is with this special function, number. So I'll teach you a little bit of new syntax. So that just turns a string into a number. And let's see if that maybe is all we need to solve our problem. All right, so now we can see we're not getting the big concatenations. We're just getting a lot of numbers being added up. Great. So we can comment out the printing. Just do the totaling in here, compute the average at the end, and then hopefully print the average. And there we go. Now we actually have a working correct number. So a lot of debugging in that process, but frankly, that's how it is to code, as I'm sure you guys have figured out by now as you're working on your assignments. So we'll get rid of all my debugging text. And there we go. We now have some code that will take input values from the user and print out the average. Let's also add in the median. So in statistics, the median is just the middle value in a list. So if we have our list of values, we can do values.sort, and that will put them in numerical order. We also know values.length, and if we divide that by 2, that'll give us the middle index. But there's an issue if we have an odd number because it will give us something 0.5. So what we can use is the round function. Round will just round it to, in this case, it'll round it up. It rounds like you learned in elementary school. So we can say values, and then we'll take the index that's spaced halfway, basically, and we'll round it in case we have an odd number, and that's going to be our median. And then we can just copy this line. I'll say the median is what we computed here. And we just need to make sure that we add this on. So we're going to take the current thing and append this. Let's put a BR tag in there. So we take what's currently in inner HTML, which is the average. We have that here. We're going to add a BR, the median, and that whole string gets put in there as the new value. Make sure I have that saved. I have one error here. The rounding that I just showed you, you actually have to do math.round. All right, there we go. So we get the average, and now we also get the median. So we've written a little statistical analysis program, pretty simple one, but still potentially useful. This also shows us ways that we can use loops with the arrays, how we can parse the arrays by using the split function on strings. I had to show you a couple new features, the number and the math.round. And these are the sorts of things that as you're programming, if it's something that you want to do and you kind of figure out that, oh, it's treating them as strings, how do I convert it? It's easy to look up. And of course, you can always ask me, and I will help you figure out what it is. So there you go, a good long working example of how we can use arrays.